The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello. Looks like it's about that time for us to get started. So I first wanted to just say a quick thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to learn a little bit more about accounts payable and how we can make it more efficient. We at Columbus have spent quite a lot of our energy and time working with our customers, helping them make the migration through a digital transformation. And so today we wanted to spend a little bit of time and talk about how that digital transformation can take place in accounts payable. So today's agenda, we're going to start off with a brief review of some industry metrics. Then we will talk about a little bit of the pain points and opportunities for improvements in accounts payable. And then that will kind of lead us into some highlights of the Invoice Workflow tool that we'll be kind of focusing on today. A little bit about myself. My name is Turner Foster, and I'm a technical solutions architect in the pre-sales group with Columbus. But prior to joining Columbus, I've worked for several companies that ran their business on AX. For those companies, I've worn lots of hats. I think that's probably maybe a familiar story for lots of IT people in the AX space. I've been a developer, been an AX administrator, been a SQL Server DBA, business analyst. I can confess that I'm happily a member of, in one of my previous companies, the accounting group, told me I was a member of team accounting. So I've always been appreciative of the work that they do, the hard work. They kind of tend to process a tremendous amount of work on generally very tight time constraints. So I was always happy in any kind of capacity I could do to help make their job a little easier. And actually that works out well for this. So hopefully this product will solve some pain points of some of my former colleagues. Wanted to first kind of start talk today about Two Increase. Two Increase is our Columbus company that's focused on software development. So they have a broad suite of software applications targeted in the dynamic space, AX and also NAV. One of the things as a former developer I really like about the Two Increase products, they're native integrations. So the AX applications are kind of X++ AX, native in AX. I think you get lots of benefits from that. They, of course, offer on-premise and then cloud apps, more and more cloud apps as the Dynamics 365 environment is picking up. And one of the other nice things about it, most deployments require little or no customization. So over on the right, see there's a kind of a broad set of tools, but I think the one that we are going to focus on today is Invoice Workflow. One other slide about Two Increase in general that I like. Lots of data points on this slide, but if you kind of start to the left, I'll highlight the few that I think I like to see the most. So over 1,800 customers. Kind of speaks to how well and how broadly adopted these tools are. Kind of over there in the little to the right of center, 94% customer service satisfaction. So once again, speaks to the quality of the applications and the value I think that the customers are seeing. And then all the way on the far right, over 50+ software and applications exclusively for Microsoft Dynamics. So Two Increase has been around for quite a while. They're really active in the dynamic space and lots of solid applications that are making customers' lives better every day. So they're a great team. They do great work, and kind of happy to be all part of the Columbus family. So today, Invoice Workflow is kind of what we're going to speak about. But before we get too deeply into that, let's kind of just take a step back and think about accounts payable today. It's often can be described as a manual paper-based process. Everything seems to be time-consuming. The manual nature of it tends to, I think it's inevitable that you end up with some mistakes as you kind of do that manual data entry, and then traditionally a high cost. If you kind of couple that state of affairs with the direction that business is going in general, we seem to see everywhere, and everything is happening with an increasing speed and complexity. increased invoices and purchase orders coming through, and then also suppliers kind of steadily pressuring back, right? They want everything to be easier. They want it to be easier to do business with. And so kind of a steady pressure on accounting and then accounts payable in general to be more efficient and to be more responsive. So before I go to the next slide, I wanted to launch a poll that would kind of help get us some information about what these next few slides are. So if you'll bear with me. So kind of just to get a feel for the attendees today, what your experience is relating to KPIs around process cost per invoice. If those are metrics that you're tracking, if they're if you've never heard of that metric, if you're not tracking any KPIs, so kind of just general question to get an idea of where you are in your kind of knowledge and kind of awareness of those KPIs. All right, so results are coming in. We'll give it just a little bit more time. So let's see, the results are fairly evenly spread across the board, with maybe the nose winning by a bit. So with that said, let's go on to the first graph talking about that KPI. So this is a graph that I pulled from the CFO.com, an article back in June of 2015, where they're talking about room for improvements in AP departments. This graph talks about, the chart talks about this metric. So the top performers in AP departments, it costs them approximately $4.98 per invoice to process that invoice. There's a median of $7.75, and then the worst performers costing over $12 an invoice. So quite a large spread between the top performers and the bottom performers, and kind of easy to think about how much that will add up over the total number of invoices getting processed. So from that article, one of the takeaways, what are the key costs in AP? I think this won't come as a surprise to anyone, but 62% of those AP costs are labor and other cost drivers, data errors in the purchase orders, shipping or receiving documents and invoices. So clearly data's errors are leading to exceptions, and exceptions require more labor to resolve, right? So data errors are a big driver. And then the inability to automate payment timing, which leads to lost early payment discounts. So kind of those key costs. We've got another study, I think it's a little bit older than that, from the Aberdeen group that talks about, adds a couple more KPIs in there. So our KPI that we are talking about, our average cost, is in the center of that chart there. So the numbers that they found were a little bit wider than the previous one. So $3.34, the most efficient, the best in class, they call it. And then the worst performers are all the way over $16, almost $17 an invoice. So two other interesting metrics that I like to see that. So the first is the time to process an invoice in days. So 4.1 days, best in class, and then the laggards, as they call them, over 16 days. And then the discount capture rate, so that graph will be, that chart will be out of 10. So the best in class are capturing 9 out of the 10 available discounts, where the worst are only able to get 1.8, so not even 2 out of the 10 discounts. So significant changes between AP departments. I think it's really startling when you see the graphs that laid out this way. So the interesting takeaway from that Aberdeen Group study was the statistic that 77% of those best-in-class organizations have AP automation fully integrated in their ERP. So not all of those are having invoice workflow, right, clearly, but they're having some form of AP automation that's tightly integrated into the ERP system. So what's driving that, the issues in AP? So what challenges are they facing kind of on a day in and day out basis? So the first one on the list are the difficulty finding or managing paper-based documents. So that whole manual process is not surprising to see that up there at the top. Also, difficulties unable to reconcile accounts and payments in a timely manner, and then unable to handle exceptions in a timely manner. So all three of those are significant drivers. And then also on that list, as we've kind of talked about before, inability to capture early payment discounts, and then pressure from suppliers, steady pressure to shorten payment times. So against those challenges, what benefits can automation bring? So still coming out of those surveys, 49% of invoice processing cost savings. So I think we saw that in the chart. The second line I think is interesting. The 63% of invoices on average can flow through with no manual intervention required. We'll kind of see that later on in the Invoice Workflow tool, where if you've mapped certain rules and the conditions happen, the invoicing process just flows along, and it kind of allows the accounts payable team to focus on exceptions rather than kind of the basics. So that ability also kind of leads us to the next number is pretty tightly tied to that, right? 4 times the volume is able to be processed. I think that's directly related to being able to focus on the exceptions rather than the clean, normal, healthy processes that go through. And then picking up 18% shorter days payable outstanding rate, 5.5 days less for companies with automation. So one last little thing to get through the normal workflow, like when we're talking about this accounts payable process, I wanted to throw a quick little kind of slide up here to talk about what this flow means. Like it'll initiate for us from the supplier, where they'll actually create an invoice, put the invoice into an envelope and mail them, or EDI if they're more advanced. And then it lands on us as a customer. So the first thing we have to do is kind of some form of data capture process. So we'll open the mail, we'll pull the invoices out, we will manually key the data into the AP system if that's this process and system that we're using. You can load them into a scanner and do an OCR process if you're using a tool that allows for that. Then you always kind of have to allow for the time required to correct any OCR failures that have occurred. So the first stage is that capturing of the data. The next phase is the validation process, where you're doing kind of matching that invoice with a purchase order. And then also the next way, the 3-way match, is matching that with the evidence of receipt of goods or services, then resolving any discrepancies, and then kind of having to go through the approval flow, right? So getting approval of any variances and exceptions, making sure that those things are approved to pay. And then kind of the last block over there is sort of the whole department overall, right? So part of their daily work is answering suppliers' questions about the status. They are forecasting cash flow. They're kind of monitoring their performance. They're managing available payment discounts, hopefully, although I think we've seen from those graphs, not all companies are actively doing that. Then the final step out the door is the payment. So with that kind of idea of the accounts payable process, let's now kind of take a step and look at what is Microsoft Dynamics AX doing for us out of the gate. So just the core product itself, and kind of maybe some places where it falls short a little bit. So there is no out-of-the-box integration with OCR or IDR, so optical character recognition or integrated data repository systems. So no out-of-the-box integrations with those tools. The workflow that you get is not supporting organizations' needs for invoice approvals. And they're actually, it's decentralized in the tool where there's different invoice processing methods. That also can lead to some time-consuming and areas where it's difficult to keep track of the invoices. There's no real easy way to keep track of that process. They're in there, but you sort of have to work at it and know what's going on, and so not intuitive, not super easy. Then the storage of the digital copy is only manually supported, and then also no capability to manage invoices centrally. So that's the takeaway that we've got there at the bottom, is that there's certainly room for improvement. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about the Invoice Workflow product. So first of all, why consider Invoice Workflow? So it will, kind of at a high level, I mean, it saves time, reduce cost. So it allows you to customize and create a process that works just right for your department and your specific vendors to make sure that those invoices are approved by the right people, that they're on time. That has a benefit of reducing cost and workloads on all the people. The nice thing, one of the nice advantages of the workflow is it allows you to focus on exceptions. So you get automatic notifications to finance managers, and that helps ensure on-time approval of those invoices. And so by allowing the normal kind of regular invoices that you've set up rules for, that you expect kind of recurring, the process, those can flow through. It frees up your staff's time to work on the exceptions and the ones that have issues. Once again, from an IT perspective, the fact that it's easily deployed into AX, it is an AX solution fully inside AX, easy to set up and configure. So that, I think that's a nice benefit. And then it is certified for Microsoft Dynamics. So it delivers into your organization, kind of gives you increased visibility. We'll quickly kind of get to a screen that shows you that, what it actually looks like. But it helps get you transparency of your invoice and approval process. It is kind of helping with that early payment, capturing the early payment discounts, giving you visibility into that as well. One of the benefits we like to tout are improved supplier relationships. If you've got suppliers that are top-notch, right? You send a purchase order, they ship the thing that you've ordered, they ship the right quantity, they send you, it ships on time, they send you the invoice matches, everything lines up, they're executing well. With Invoice Workflow, if your team is focused on the exceptions and everything works well, then these suppliers kind of don't get punished by or penalized by the fact that there's a gigantic stack of paper with other problems, right? So they're, those kind of suppliers that get green lighted and are doing their things right and doing their job correctly and helping, kind of your organization and working as a team, those invoices will just flow right through the system, and they'll be happier, right? Because they're getting paid on the timely basis, and I think it helps with that relationship. And then the last thing is always important. The more we kind of encourage, the more you can go paperless. It's just good for the environment, saves money, right? It's not having to print all the pages. But yeah, so go lean and go green is also a nice benefit. So let's get a quick overview of what Invoice Workflow, what pieces make up this product. So the first piece is there's a section for importing. So I'll point out that it is not a tool. It is not an OCR tool. It integrates well with some of the industry leading OCR tools, but it is kind of a native AX tool. It picks up inside AX. So there's an import process where it will pick up XML files. It will pick up EDI files. It will pick up scanned PDF files if you want. You can start there, but you essentially start with kind of logic and sections to import your invoices into the system. Once you have them imported into the system, there's a mastering section where you can edit ledger details if you need, like financial dimensions. You can split them across different financial dimensions if needed. You can do the match, the 2- and 3-way match. So you've got that mastering. And after that, it drops into the workflow section. And so that's kind of the heart, right? It's in the name of the product, it's the heart. So inside that workflow, you can finish mastering if there's some sections that need to be done. And then inside the workflow, you've got the, all the things that you would expect to see in a workflow. You can approve invoices, you can reject invoices, place them on hold if need be to get some more information, you can review them, you can redirect them. So lots of powerful tools inside the workflow. And then some other supporting processes that, email notifications, and then other pieces that just assist and make the whole process work a little bit smoother. So the heart of it is, and we'll see a screenshot on the next slide, but is the WorkBench. So the WorkBench is one central place that lets your departments kind of do all their vendor invoice processing. That WorkBench is multi-user enabled. There's a check-in and check-out to make sure that your, people are not working on the same invoice. It is also, and this is super helpful for certain companies, it's multi-company enabled. So if your organization has a lot of legal entities and maybe a centralized accounts payable department, you have the ability to, inside this WorkBench, select a set of legal entities and kind of work on them as a group. So that multi-company adds a lot of efficiencies. I know that there's often been pain points of companies where their accounts payable group kind of had to work in one legal entity, do a set, change to another, change to another, change to another. So a lot of time lost in their daily process, kind of switching through those legal entities. Then another nice benefit as the one WorkBench, right, as that one central place, you can process all kinds of different types of invoices. So cost invoices and project invoices, fixed asset invoices, and regular purchase order invoices can all be processed inside this WorkBench. So that kind of one place to do the work, I think, helps. Has the ability to generate a paper invoice if it's needed. And then also a nice little feature is it's available as an external client, right? It's a web click once kind of web application that lets you run it if you don't have AX or do not want to have the AX client installed on certain users in the approval flow screens. So with that said, let's look at the screen. So quickly, you'll recognize this is an AX 2012 kind of standard application look and feel. Lot of information here. We're not going to get too deep in it, but I'll just kind of talk about the sections. So the first section there, sort of in the middle, is the invoices. That's where all your invoices that you're working on will go. You can kind of control what lands in those invoices by the filter section up above. So you'll see there, you can filter by company, as we talked about before, approver, so several different filters, powerful filters that you can use to kind of get to the right level of invoices that you want to work on. Once you've done that, then on the bottom left, we see that ledger posting. So there's the ability to kind of copy lines and split lines. So if you need to allocate your invoice across different financial dimensions, you can do that right from the WorkBench. So also some menu options on the top that kind of speak to the power of the tool. You see that check-in button at the top for to make sure that the single user is working on the product. Different functionality available through the menu. There's the ability to kind of add notes at the invoice or invoice line level. And then at the bottom right is the workflow, which kind of shows you the status of the invoice as it flows through the workflow. So one view, kind of nice to have, right? So one view that you go to and you can see the entire process and history of your invoices. So I think it truly does help make accounts payable departments more efficient. So what are the core elements of invoice workflow? One of the nice things, once again, from an IT standpoint, it's built to use the invoice register and invoice approval journal, but it does not change their basic functionality. So it kind of leverages that strong Microsoft technology that's working reliably. It leverages that, but it doesn't really change that core functionality. It is also, as I spoke a little bit earlier, it's built to integrate with popular scanning software. So it does not do OCR, but it is kind of built to integrate with like a ReadSoft or a LaserNet. So if you've got an OCR tool or that you're trying to build out an entire suite, then it's kind of nice that the invoice workflow will pick up those documents as they come in, but that will be an extra piece if you want to do the OCR piece. Also gives you flexible approval process controlled inside that workflow. We'll see a few examples of that here in a few minutes. And then the ability to have approval of invoices outside of the AX client via that web application. So I'll show you a few more screenshots and talk at a high level. We're not going to get too detailed just for the sake of time, but so the rules for invoice workflow are kind of set per vendor. So each vendor, it kind of gives you that flexibility that you can assign the vendors to workflow groups, you can assign approvers. So it kind of gives you the ability to activate workflow per vendor and then set up the rules to how you want to handle invoices coming from that vendor. On the workflow side, you have, I'm going to show this slide just to talk about the wide variety. I won't go into all of these things as well, right? There's tons of options, but the point is sort of just to show you the power of the workflow, the number of parameters that you can set. So there's intercompany stuff that you can set. There's parameters relating around taxes that you can set. So lots of a robust set of parameters that allow you to customize your workflow exactly the way that your business needs it to go. One of the other features I think that's really nice is the ability to group your invoices by type. So you can create your types, and then for each type of invoice that you create, so that kind of group, if you think about, you have all kinds of settings that you can control. So if you decide to put a vendor and their invoices are going into a certain group, you can have, you know, some of those settings like we see right there in the middle, approve automatically, transfer to payment automatically. So you've got settings that you can define per group, and then you get a lot of opportunities to customize that, right? So you might have new vendors could go into a group, a special group that, you know, kind of has clearly nothing automatically happen because you want these new vendors, you want to see everything that comes through, you know, for a certain period of time to validate it. So you could have a new vendor group that kind of has a restricted workflow, but you can also break your, you know, different groups out for the different workflows that you want. So tons of flexibility to manage and to kind of categorize your vendors and your invoices in order to match your business need. So the tool itself starts kind of, as we saw earlier, importing into the tool. So it'll take XML, kind of just standard XML documents. There's a mapping process where you can kind of identify what that XML document looks like. It will clearly work with EDI. It will take the FormPipe LaserNet XML documents. It'll work with those. It'll also work with the ReadSoft. I believe that's now a Kofax product. And then you can also just import PDF files if you want. So once you've imported them, then you send them off to that workbench that we saw. They'll light up there, and from there you could kind of go through your process. I wanted to highlight just a few kind of time-saving features that you get inside the workflow piece. You have the ability to create substitutes. So one of those highlights in those metrics, right, was, you know, paying on time to capture those discounts. Well, those discounts don't pause if someone goes on vacation or if someone was out sick. So if you know, by giving you the ability to do substitutes, you can, you know, kind of live migrate that workflow, right? So you can have a date effective rules that, you know someone is going to be out, and you know someone is going to step in and do the approvals for that person while they're out. You kind of set that substitute up ahead of time with their effective dates, and then the workflow will automatically respect that, and you will still continue to kind of capture and keep your workflow healthy, capture those discounts while, you know, someone is out on vacation, or unfortunately if someone is ill. So you can categorize those. Sound below a couple examples of holiday and illness, but it's just a powerful tool to keep kind of to easily allow you to keep your workflow healthy and active, right? So you've got a flow of people that are in the approval process, and it kind of helps you manage that ahead of time to make sure that the invoice is getting to the right person at the right time. Kind of a little bit related to that as well is that everyone in that approval process has the ability to redirect an invoice. So if an invoice lands in their, kind of lands in their box, but they're not the right person, or they think that there's some issue with that, they can redirect it back to another individual to review. So it kind of gives them the ability to, it doesn't just get stuck on their desk, right? A piece of paper on a desk waiting for them to try to figure out what's happening. They can redirect it to someone else and maintain the momentum of that invoice through the workflow. You also have the ability, you can reject it, right? If you get it and there's an issue that you've noticed, then you can reject it, send it back to the bookkeeper. You can make a note as to why you're rejecting it and what needs to be corrected, but you can kind of immediately push it back if you need to. So it just gives you a lot of powerful, what you would kind of expect from a healthy workflow application, right? To get the items that are coming to you, to get timely notification of those, and then empower the approver to immediately take an action to resolve that, right? If it's approval, great. If there's something else that needs to be done, then they kind of have right at their fingertips a process to manage that. So there's also the ability kind of at that top menu option, if you've got XML documents coming in, you can have a show invoice. If for some reason you need to create a PDF file of an invoice, you've got the ability to kind of generate that out of the EDI document or XML document. So that's kind of a nice to have. I don't think that's going to be a life-changing tool for anyone, but there are certain use cases where that's important, and so it's nice to have that feature if you need it for certain conditions. So one quick little view of the web client. So it is, as I said before, kind of a click once application that you will install it from a web URL, and then kind of gives you a application to allow you to continue working. So if you've got cases where you don't have the AX client running on certain approvers, laptops or workstations, and you don't want to install it there, but you still want to give them the ability to kind of do this task, then this software, kind of click once software, I think is a nice benefit. It just gives you some flexibility. It doesn't do anything that the Invoice Workflow product inside AX does, but it kind of gives you the ability to do those tasks outside. So with that said, to recap what we've covered, wanted to throw up this slide again to show once again our top performers down there below $5 an invoice, and our bottom performers, or laggards, I think as we named them earlier, above 12, right, between 12 and 16. So a lot of money could be potentially being lost per invoice, and lots of opportunities. So I would encourage you to kind of try to track that metric and see where your organization is landing with that metric, and then just know that if you are kind of in that high side, you know that there are opportunities for significant cost savings. So that, once again, to increase workflow, invoice workflow, you can save time, reduce cost. You can focus on your exceptions, allow your AP team to be more efficient. You can easily deploy it in AX, which will make your IT guys happy. It is a certified for Microsoft Dynamics solution, and it will give you increased visibility, allow you to capture more and more of those early payment discounts, and help you to improve your supplier relationships. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for attending. See, we ran a little bit over 30 minutes, but I appreciate everyone still hanging in there. Wanted to throw my email address up there. I'm happy to answer any questions. If there are some things that you saw that you had more questions about or wanted to kind of get some more information on, send me an email. I'll be happy to assist you in any way. If you would like to actually see the product in use and not just some PowerPoint slides, we would be more than happy to schedule a demo. If you talk to your sales guy or talk to me or whoever sent you the link to this webinar, be happy to reach out. We'll be happy to set that up. If you've got specific business scenarios that you want to talk about, include that in the request for the demo, and we certainly will do everything we can to cover that. So we think it's a great product. We're always happy to show it off and happy to answer any questions that people have about it. So with that said, thank you very much for your time and attendance. Hope you got some value out of it, and have a great rest of the day.